Why do you get offended so easily? The reason that you might get offended so easily honestly might surprise you, and I know that it surprised me, is I used to be a person who would get so offended when anybody would make fun of me or say something to me that I didn't agree with, and it was that I was just so attached to my ego. So what I'm telling you right now is that the reason you get so offended so easily is because you're so attached to your ego. You're so attached to this story that you tell yourself about how you're always right about what you're telling yourself and what you're putting out in the world, and you never really take a step back to think about whether what you're saying and what you're doing is the true you. And I can guarantee you 100% that your ego is not the true you. Who you think you are, this mask that you wear around, isn't the true you. And you'll basically, your ego does everything it can to try to convince you and try to convince other people of its reality because it knows that it's not real. The only thing that is real is you, the true authentic self. You might not understand what that is, and I made videos on that before, that you are love. You are literally infinite love. You can't really put words and definitions on it, but you basically have this small self, this ego, basically this role that you play in your life, and then you have the larger self, basically your connection with everybody and everything. I know some of these ideas may seem a little out there, but bear with me here as they really explain pretty easily why you get offended so easily. Because when you're really living as your true self, when you're living in your connection with everybody else in unconditional love, there's no reason that you would ever get offended because all you feel is love towards yourself and everybody else. And even if somebody were to throw hate at you or try to make you fearful, that wouldn't have any effect on you because fear is never going to affect the unconditional and infinite love that you are. And that's the truth. And I used to get so offended so easily because I didn't know who I was. I was trying to basically convince other people of the validity of the mask, of the reality of the ego that I was trying to push on people, that I'm trying to be good at this and that and running around for validation when it's all just temporary. It's all just an illusion. And trying to search outside yourself for these things, it's one, not going to make you fulfilled, but secondly, it's just going to have you running in circles. And the more you try to defend your points and defend, why do you even try to defend your opinions to other people? When you understand the infinity of the world, or even just the amount of people with different viewpoints in your city, in your town, in your country of where you live, there are going to be so many people that disagree with you on issues that you don't even think are disagreeable, but they're going to disagree with you and everybody thinks that they're right. It's literally like we're all living in different worlds, in mental universes of our own designs. And you're really never going to be able to convince another person that they're wrong about something. The only way that, basically the only way that anybody will change their mind about something is if they think that they came up with it themselves. I'll let that sink in because that's really how it is. Even if you tell somebody they're wrong, all that's going to make them do is get more offended. I mean, think about when the last time somebody told you that you were wrong about something or you got a bad grade on a test. Your initial reaction isn't to think that, oh, maybe it was my fault, maybe I didn't study for it. Your initial reaction is to blame the teacher, to say maybe it wasn't fair that they graded that, and you get offended so easily. Why do you get offended so easily in this scenario? I know that I'm a person who is really too much of a perfectionist when it comes to grades. I worry too much about that stuff, and I would really get offended when I would get a bad grade on a test. And the more I think about it now, just how silly it all sounds, but I pretty much put my sense of worth, my sense of self, in something that is not really fully in my control. So that's another huge reason of why you get offended so easily, is that you're basically putting your energy, putting your effort, and putting your self-worth into something that's not real, into something that's not in your control. Maybe it's how much money you make. You make a certain amount of money and somebody basically makes fun of you for not making enough money or not making as much money as them or comparing it to somebody else. And you just have to think about where these people are coming from when they're trying to tear you down. Because if you let them, you're letting them win. You're basically falling right into their trap. That's what I'm going to say on that. It's really the reason that you're so offended is because I know this is going to come off as just being harsh, rude, but it's because you're mentally weak. And I can say this with absolute certainty is that I was mentally weak. I was so mentally weak. I never meditated. I never trained my mind. I didn't have very thick skin. I had the thinnest skin of pretty much anybody I knew, and that negatively affected my mental health. I can say that proudly now, as over the past 2 years, I've been working on this every single day to the point where I don't really care what other people think about me. People are going to think whatever they want, hate or love. I know I'm content with myself knowing that I'm expressing my true authentic self and I'm expressing the love that I feel inside. And I used to be so insecure because I was always living in fear. I was always living as my false self. I was always living as my ego. And when you really make this transition, I wouldn't even call it a transition, but kind of just a mindset shift where you stop living from ego, you stop living from fear, you start living from spirit, you start living from love. You start to see that reflect in how people treat you, but you also see that reflect in your inside and how you feel about yourself. And understand that how you feel about yourself is far more important than how anybody else thinks about you. And again, another reason why you get offended is because you value somebody else's opinion more than you value your own opinion. I mean, if somebody were to make fun of me now for say like, oh, this video is dumb and nothing you're saying even makes sense, like you're dumb, I would just laugh. I'd be like, yeah, that's your opinion. What are you gonna do? I mean, I'm me. I can't stop not being me, but I'm not gonna own it. I mean, I'm not gonna not own it. I need to own who I am. You need to own who you are and realize that if you're not living as your true authentic self, if you're not loving in your expression, then you're going to be a lot more vulnerable to people trying to tear you down. But when you're grounded in who you truly are, when you have a solid foundation in your kind of tree, in your tree of life, that's beautiful, but when you have a solid foundation, all the wind, people are going to try to knock you down. They're basically blowing smoke at you. That's a good term, but they're trying to blow smoke. They're trying to get this wind to tear down your tree. And if you have a solid foundation, you're not going to get offended very easily. People who, I wouldn't say this is a general thing, but I would say that the more successful you are in any field, the less offended you get. There are definitely some exceptions to that. Is definitely artists probably get offended more than other people, and I would know this as being an artist, but I also realize that I don't have much reason to be offended if somebody say, I wrote a poetry book, and if somebody doesn't like the book, I can't really be offended because in my perspective, this is all just my opinion, my perspective, it's more about them than it is about me. Anybody who lashes out at you or who tries to make you feel bad, they're just trying to project the anger and the hurt that they feel inside. It's just a form of self-expression. And there's really no reason to be offended by that. I mean, the thing that I've learned on this whole journey is it's so silly to me now that I could have ever been offended by anything, but it was that I lived in the wrong mindset. I lived in a mindset of that I had to basically prop up this mask of myself and this false self that I had to project out into the world and try to convince people of how great I am when we're all equally great. We are all infinitely great, the same one infinite love. There's no need to convince other people of that because they already know it in their heart. They always know it deep down that we are all connected. There's no reason to be offended by that. There's no reason. You might listen to this and say, he's completely wrong. This guy's off his rocker. This guy's crazy. That's just your opinion. That doesn't offend me anymore because I'm grounded in my truth. And it's definitely a freeing mindset to have. And when you realize that the reason you're getting offended is because you're basically trying to defend, this is what it is. You're trying to defend something that is undefendable. You're basically trying to hold up a fence. This is what it is. You're trying to hold up a fence from being torn down by a tornado. And you think that you being behind the fence and pushing it up is going to somehow stop that tornado from barreling over you. it's always going to barrel over you. So, the only way to not have the fence get torn down is to not build the fence in the first place. If you didn't understand the analogy, your ego is the fence, a mask that you wear. Stop building all these fences that divide you between other people, and just let your guard down, let your inner light shine through, that love that you are, that I am, that connects all of us. And just think about this next time somebody lashes out at you and you feel the need to get offended. Because, and here's one thing I'll end on, is that you getting offended hurts you more than, it doesn't hurt the other person, it helps the other person. You don't need to get offended. You might think that it's a warranted reaction. It's not a warranted reaction. It's just going to send you down a negative loop, a downward spiral. Meet it with love. Laugh it off. Don't take yourself as seriously. Smile. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. Have a great day. I hope you enjoy watching this video. But if you didn't,